I went and done some work on what was then the Flash Gordon movie, which Queen did the soundtrack for. And that was working for a chap called Pete Aston, who had a company called Model Effects in Watford. And that's where I met Ridley Scott, and we worked together on and off on lots and lots of projects, both for Pete and, in the wider film world later on. While I was working at Pete Aston's, I did a radio-controlled coffin for the Stanley Baxter Christmas show, and it was a sketch about burying the head of a model boat society at sea. And of course, when they tipped this coffin in the water, it shot off like a speedboat. Well, we had to make this coffin and test it, and we arranged to go over to Rickmansworth Aquadrome very early in the morning before anyone was about, so it wouldn't be seen while we tested it, balanced, put ballast in it, made sure everything was right. And we got to the lakes, and it was an autumn morning, because obviously it was a Christmas special. It was going to be filmed about September time. And we took the lid off this coffin, started the engine up, checked all the radio gear, range checked it, checked the engine was running properly, put the lid on and opened up the throttle, and this thing, full-size coffin, just shot across the lake like a speedboat. And all these all-night fishermen that had been dozing off in the reeds appeared out of nowhere, absolutely gobsmacked at this coffin flying across the lake. And that was actually funnier than the sketch in the show. So we had a great time doing that job. And there was loads of things like that you look back with, such fond memories. When we were doing Empire of the Sun, we had this Land Rover that was on hire that we went back and forth to the location with, and it must have been the worst, oldest, most worn Land Rover that this Spanish hire company had, and it was like driving a shopping trolley, only 10 times worse. But we took it in turns to drive it, and at the time we feared for our lives going around some of the corners. But now it's something that's a fond memory of a great time that we had. And we did, Empire of the Sun out in Spain was just, we had a fantastic, it was madness building them. We did some seriously long hours. We had a hell of a job getting some of them to fly properly. But whilst working for Peter, I did several different movies. There was Flash Gordon, and we did a lot of stuff for Outland with Sean Connery in it, which was a fantastic film to work on. But that was in the very early days when the unions had control over the studios, and people like me couldn't really get in, and going into the studio to even work on a model that I'd worked on was a problem because I didn't have a union ticket. And they were sort of very odd times because there was a lot of movie making politics that actually got in the way of you being creative and getting on and doing the job. But I finally sort of transitioned into working in the studios. I did some work on a Ridley Scott Barclays Bank commercial, which we did all the little robot tellers and everything in the bank, and it was one of those mental jobs where we worked 26 hours a day for 8 days a week on it. It was mad, and up into the studio to get it all done. And yet again, it was one of them things where there was a real buzz about it, and when we finished filming, there was a couple of us, we got taken out for a meal, and we just both fell asleep in our dinners in a restaurant. And at the time, I was a lot younger then, and I could deal with that sort of manicness. I did a bit of work on Space Precinct, where I was working on the props department for that, which was great fun. We had a pretty free rein, and that was probably. Whilst I didn't think the design of it was particularly good, we didn't really get a great deal of art department feedback, a little bit of guidance, but most of the directors of various episodes were very happy to let us have a little bit of free will and design what we practically wanted, as long as it was quick and it was on stage on time. That was the important factor, because that fitted with the budget. And so I thoroughly enjoyed working on that, and I worked with some great people. Robbie's dad, Roy Scott, was one of one of those characters. He didn't let anybody mess him around, so he was a great laugh, but also someone who was, to some extent, feared by a lot of people because he was fairly abrasive until you got to know him, and he was one of those really nice blokes, but he had the right attitude to deal with all the crap, basically, the political crap that used to go on. So I suppose I learnt quite a lot from him, so that was good fun.